And then what happens is after you say yes enough times, then motivation kicks in. People think motivation is the thing that gets you started. It's not. Motivation is the thing that happens once you start. And so micro yeses unlocks, that's like the cheat code to accessing motivation.
Welcome to Season of Stuck, the podcast that takes a deep dive into the all too human experience of feeling stuck. I'm your host, Deanna DeBera, and on this podcast, we explore all things stuck. How and why stuckness happens, what it feels like, how to learn and grow from it, and ultimately, how to get unstuck and move forward in an authentic, empowered way. If you are looking for insights, support, and community as you make your journey from stuck to unstuck, you're in the right place. Now, let's jump into today's episode. Well, hello there. Welcome to another episode of Season of Stuck. If this is your first time listening, thank you so much for joining us. I am so happy that you're here. And if this is not your first time listening, thank you for continuing to join us. I can't say enough about how special and meaningful it is to know that you are choosing to continue spending time here and letting me be a part of your journey from stuck to unstuck. So thank you again. Now, before we jump into today's episode, I thought it would be helpful to talk a bit more about what stuckness actually is and what is happening when we get stuck. Now, I can only speak for myself, but when I get stuck, it feels extremely personal. I feel like I'm failing, like I'm falling short, like if I was just a bit more dedicated to my success or motivated to change or invested in myself and my growth, then I wouldn't continually find myself trapped in this stuck place, unable to move forward even when I want to. And there are so many feelings that go along with that experience. I feel ashamed. I feel disappointed in myself. I feel angry. All of my thoughts take on a distinctly self-critical and judgmental tone. And physically, I bounce from feeling so tired I can barely move to so anxious I can barely sit still. It is a lot. But the more I've taken a deep dive into all things stuck, the more I've realized that not only is stuckness not a personal failing, that it's something that we all experience at some point or another, but that thinking that it's a personal failing, that if only I weren't so lazy or unmotivated or insert self-critical adjective here, then I wouldn't be stuck, is also not that unique. And that's because there is a science behind stuckness, responses that happen in our brains and our bodies and our nervous systems. And if we can understand the science piece, we can stop looking at our stuckness as a personal failing and instead tap into the research to find an evidence-based way forward that is free of judgment, self-criticism, or shame. And that is what today's guest work is all about. Britt Frank is no stranger to stuck, but following over 2 decades of addiction and mental health struggles, she got herself unstuck, ultimately becoming a clinician, educator, and trauma specialist. She's also an author. The Science of Stuck, Breaking Through Inertia to Find Your Path Forward, is a book that offers science-backed strategies for understanding stuckness and moving forward with purpose, confidence, and the freedom to become who you're truly meant to be. During our conversation, Britt and I talked about all things stuck, what stuckness actually is, why anxiety is like the check engine light of stuckness, and how even the smallest of yeses can put you on a path to getting unstuck. Let's jump into my conversation with Britt. Hi, Britt. Welcome to Season of Stuck.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
You've been looking forward to this. I have been looking forward to this. Your book, The Science of Stuck, has played such a pivotal role in my understanding of stuckness, what's actually happening, and how to navigate it. I'm so excited to dive into this with you and kind of like nerd out on all of the science. So very excited. But I guess to kick things off, I would love for you to introduce yourself to listeners and share a little bit about what inspired you to explore stuckness and write The Science of Stuck.
Hi, everybody. My name is Britt, and I'm a licensed psychotherapist and a trauma expert, and I write about being stuck and getting unstuck. My inspiration, I wish I could say, having been fully functional and a very optimized human, I wanted to share it was more like I was a hot mess and my life was an absolute disaster. And in my own journey of healing, I fell in love with the work. And At first I was annoyed. I'm like, are you telling me it's this simple? Not easy. Life's not easy, but the tools are this simple. And what have I been doing for the last 20? How much money have I spent destroying my life, rebuilding my life, going to therapy? If you know this, it's easier a little bit. Like, okay, yes, please. So I wrote this book. People are like, why this book of all the books that are available in the universe to write? It's the one I wish I had. It's the Cliff's Notes guide to all the books. Like, I read all the books, so you don't have to. Here are the most important pieces, in my opinion, to get unstuck from all the major issues: family, relationships, anxiety, stress, overwhelm, things like that.
It is always so validating to hear that I am not the only person that feels like a hot mess a lot of the time. Like, it's always like so refreshing when I hear from like someone I admire, like, oh, you go through this too. Like, hot mess, feeling stuck is part of the human condition.
It really is. And it's not like I don't get stuck now. What doesn't happen, well, one, I don't use drugs anymore. That was a big problem. But I still have anxiety. I still have meltdowns. I still have very human moments. But what doesn't happen is this spin of, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? I am just broken. It's like, okay, I know what this is and I know what to do. So the bounce back is a little faster. I still hit the wall, but I'm springier with this information than I was. But still totally hot mess. That is very human.
I love that. So I guess before we dive too deep into stuckness and getting unstuck, I think it would be helpful to define what exactly stuckness is. What is stuck?
I love that question because it really allows us to talk about what we're talking about. So, when I talk about stuckness, I am not talking about systemic oppression or war or severe mental illness or abuse. That is not being stuck. That's in some situations being abused or being oppressed. When I'm talking about stuck, the stuck situations that my work focuses on assumes you have your basic needs met and relative safety. And it's for people who have the dilemma, the very common dilemma of, part of me knows exactly what I need to do to make my life work, but this other part of me seems to take over and I'm not doing the thing I know would make things better. What's wrong with me? That's the kind of stuck where we're in this space between what we know and what we do. That's the type of stuckness that I focus on.
And I think that is such an important difference to highlight, that there is this kind of stuck that we're talking about, the stuck that to an extent we're in control of. And then there are sometimes types of stuckness that are completely out of our control, that are more systemic, that are larger overarching issues. So thank you for making that differentiation. So when we're experiencing this type of stuckness that we're talking about, this, my life isn't what I want it to be, it's not what I know it could be, but I feel frozen and can't figure out a way forward. Where does that come from? Like, what's the root of that feeling and experience?
Well, part of the dilemma is that feeling is normal, but the meaning that we assign to that feeling is sort of drilled into our head. It must be me. If I'm not doing the thing that I know I'm supposed to do, I must be lazy. I must have a problem. There must be something. I'm broken. And in the absence of accurate information, of course, we're going to think that. That's just how human brains brain. In the absence of an explanation, we're going to come up with, it must be me. And that's true with child development. Like little kid, that's why I always tell parents, don't be age appropriate, but you don't want to protect your kids from hard information because they'll know. And in the absence of understanding death or divorce or whatever, kids will always go to, it must be me. So baked into our human development is this tendency to make it about us. And that's not a narcissism thing. That's just like, oh, I can't do the thing. It must be me. So unless we interrupt that pattern with accurate information, we're going to stay stuck there.
That is part of the reason that I started this podcast. Was I am a person that has experienced stuckness in many different ways at many different points in many different areas of my life. And every time I experienced it, it was so me-centric. What's wrong with me? Why am I failing? Why am I falling short? Why can't I get it together? And it felt really like shameful and isolating, and like I just wasn't good enough to overcome the stuckness. And it wasn't till I started researching and having more conversations around stuckness that I realized that it is a universal experience. It's not a me thing, it's a human thing. And
it's
that
a we thing.
Yes, yeah. It's a we thing. It's something that we all go through. And if we can understand it and remove that, kind of personal attachment that we are doing something wrong, it then becomes easier to overcome.
Exactly. And let's just say, for the sake of argument, that you are doing something wrong. Like, I was smoking meth. That is objectively bad. That is not like, what's wrong with me? But that's a bad decision, clearly. But getting stuck in the why we're doing something really keeps us in that shame cycle. And the shame cycle produces brain chemicals that cause you to shut down even more. So I'm not saying the why we do things isn't important. My entire career is based on analyzing people's why. But when you're stuck, asking, why can't I do the thing, will get you more stuck. Asking, what are my choices given this situation? That's going to open up a lot more avenues for movements and momentum and all of the things that we want.
Yes. Another thing that I took from your book that was really helpful in understanding was that stuckness isn't just like an emotional or a thought experience. Like, it's actually an experience in your brain and in your nervous system. So, could you speak a little bit about what is actually happening in the brain and in the nervous system when we're experiencing stuckness?
Yeah. And honestly, like, neuroscientists and people with doctorates are probably wanting to throw things at me because I really simplify it and I use a very reductive way. But it's like, I don't need to know all of the terms. Like, I use car analogies, and I'm not a car person, but your brain has like a gas pedal and a brake pedal and an emergency brake. If your emergency brake is on, I don't care if you have a brand new Ferrari, you're not going to go anywhere. Or even the best car, if it doesn't have gas, is not going to move. But if I didn't, and assuming that not everyone's driving EVs right now, let's just assume we're still driving gas powered vehicles when this airs. But like, if I'm sitting in a car with no gas and I don't know that cars need gasoline, I'm going to go to, I must be a bad driver. There must be, I can't hack it. See, I knew it. I was destined to fail. It's like, no, you got to get out of the car and push. Like, I'll help, but we have to push. The brain is the same way. Often what we were taught of as mindset problems are not mind problems, they're body problems. Your brain's brakes, that's a physiological shutdown response. It's called the freeze response. And you can't think your way out of a body response, just like you can't affirmation a car with no gas into having gas. Like, I could sit there and visualize my gas tank being full and make a vision board of my gas tank being full and picture everything I'm going to do. And I do like all those tools. But when you're stuck, it's not visualize, affirm, change your mind. It's, we have to get your body unstuck. And that requires a different set of tools.
That has very much been my experience. So I am a person that tends to intellectualize things, right? I like lead with my mind. And I recently had an experience of stuckness where I was trying everything that I could do with my brain or like with my thinking to get out of it. I was trying to think my way out of it. I was trying to rationalize my way out of it. I was trying to intellectualize my way out of it. And it wasn't until I acknowledged this is a nervous system. This is a body response, and you need to get into your body if you want to move through that. Like, nothing changed. And making that shift to thinking about it as like a nervous system response made such a huge difference.
It's annoying. I really don't like feelings either. Like, they're uncomfortable. I would much rather live in my head than in my body. And I say that as a somatic or body oriented therapist. It's uncomfortable, but it works. So if you're stuck on the couch and you cannot peel yourself off, the challenge there is not think your way up, it's move your way up. And sometimes on some days that might mean all you can muster is you flip yourself around and put your head on the opposite side of the couch. And that at least gets you moving. I call these micro yeses. So a micro yes is the smallest possible thing that you can say yes to without shutting down. If you're stuck on the couch, a micro yes might not be get up and go for a walk. It might not even be get up and go to the bathroom. It might be just flip your legs to the other side. That at least signals to your brain movement is happening. There is no lion trying to eat us, and then proceed. And most people push back on that. That's dumb. I'm like, yeah, it is. That's why it's so great, because there's no argument. It takes longer to argue about doing it than doing it. And science shows those types of microscopic, not even baby steps, micro yeses. That's the size of the stuff we need to do to get ourselves moving.
So a micro yes is like a very, very small micro decision that takes you out of the current body state that you're in and makes a small change. So whether that is stretching your arms or like putting your feet on the floor or, like you said, moving from one position to the other. And that can then build in the brain to help you get unstuck.
Yeah, and here's why. Like if I'm stuck on a Instagram scrollathon and I'm going to watch one more video, then I'm going to go to bed, and then it's 4 hours later and I'm still watching like silly videos of chickens running around and I just cannot seem to do it. It might not even be stretch my arms. It might be just move one arm out to the side, and that's all I do in that moment. So these micro yeses work for a couple of reasons. One, if you try to take a step that's too big, your brain will, even a good shift will register to your brain as a dangerous threat. So we have to make the steps so small that you can bypass your brain's alarm system. Think of this like the Mission Impossible lasers or like the Matrix movies. I'm dating myself here, where you're like going underneath them. Micro yeses allow you to go underneath the alarm system of your brain. And then you don't stay at the pace that you start at. I'm not saying you micro yes your way for the next year. It's like just until you get moving. Micro yeses then compound. So I do one micro yes. My brain knows I'm still okay. Then I can do another one. I'm still okay. Then I can do another one. And then what happens is after you say yes enough times, then motivation kicks in. People think motivation is the thing that gets you started. It's not. Motivation is the thing that happens once you start. And so micro yeses unlocks, that's like the cheat code to accessing motivation.
So it's almost like if we're thinking about stuckness as a pattern, these micro yeses are like a pattern interrupt, and they help to put you on a slightly different course. And the more you do them, the more you're going to shift course, your motivation kicks in, and then you're driving the car in a totally different direction.
Exactly.
Also, it sounds like you and I have the same Instagram algorithm, because I am also watching like funny chicken videos late into the night when I want to be sleeping. So I feel you on that one. I'd love to talk about some of the different ways that stuckness shows up, like in behavior, in thought patterns. I know you mentioned drug use. I have been alcohol free for about 14 and a half years. Alcohol was the thing that has kept me the most stuck in my life. And it wasn't until I was able to have a major pattern interrupt and stop drinking that I gained any forward momentum and move forward in a meaningful way. So obviously that was a very large and significant way that stuckness shows up. But it can also show up in like very small, less significant ways that can compound on each other. So I'm curious, what are some of the different ways that stuckness can manifest? And what are some of the symptoms that tend to go with stuckness?
I love that question. So the main areas people tend to get stuck are fitness, finances, family, friends, intimate relationships, and career. So that's it's not the only place, but even for people who think they're fine, that can be a kind of stuckness. It's I'm fine, but I'm not really fine because there's more that I want to do, be, or have, but there's nothing objectively bad happening. So I'm fine. Not having enough going wrong is a type of stuckness that I don't want things to go wrong in order to motivate anyone. But as a recovering addict, I needed to have enough discomfort to warrant the pain of the change process. So everything being not good, but not bad, that's a type of stuckness. So if you're sort of in this, well, yeah, this is how it manifests. Yeah, everything's fine. I mean, I'm fine. Work is great. My relationship is fine. And, I get the bills paid. And if you're actually fine with that, I'm not saying you shouldn't be. But I know from a decade and 10,000 plus client hours, most people, if there's more for them, what's available to them? We get one life, as far as we know, and it's short. And we want to live it. And so that's a big source of stuckness, is not even the bad stuff. It's the lack of bad stuff. And then, of course, financial insecurity. I can't tell you how many people I work with who have no idea what's coming in, what's going out, not having a budget. I mean, I get it. I was late 30s before I was like even willing to look. It was more like head in the sand. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. It's scary. But things like that, boundaries. But how can you tell if you're stuck is a question I get asked a lot. And my answer is, you'll know. You'll know. Like if you're being honest, are you stuck? No, I'm fine. Like as a former drinker, if I were to ask you 15 years ago, if you've been alcohol free for 14 years, how's everything going? Part of you would probably be like, I'm fine. And it's like, okay, but like, you're not. I know you're not. I know I'm not. And so how do we know if we're stuck is an interesting question. My answer is if you ask, if you inquire within your own mind, you'll know.
And it can be such an intuitive experience, right? Where Maybe there's no checklist that you can go down and say, oh, I have X, Y, and Z. And when you put those together, it equals stuck. It's more of a feeling of inertia, of not being satisfied with where you are, but not really knowing where you want to go or how to get there.
Which is another huge source of stuckness, is this belief that I need to know my path in order to walk it. And sometimes our path only emerges once we go in the wrong direction. And so a step in the wrong direction is almost always preferable to waiting until you have the perfect plan. And again, I don't know why it's always a car analogy for me, but it is. Your GPS won't kick in until you start driving. And then if you make a wrong turn, it will adjust the course to get you to where you want to go. Now, you might not know exactly what you want, but I think most people would agree how I want to feel is in charge of my life and loved and connected and supported and financially secure. Like that looks different. But if that's the feeling we want, it doesn't really matter which path you start on. And the other little like shticky thing I like to say is micro yeses allow for micro messes. So if you're taking tiny steps, you're not going to veer so far off course that there's no return.
I love that. That's so helpful to think about, because I think I can speak for myself. When I am in stuckness and in that freeze action, I can feel paralyzed and like not qualified to make any decisions, right? Like I get analysis paralysis and I think of all the things that I could do. And then the thought of what might happen, what could go wrong, what kind of mess I could make keeps me frozen where I am. So just thinking that micro yeses lead to micro messes, that if you make these small, teeny micro changes, that if anything does go wrong, it's going to be a small, tiny micro problem that you can then very easily correct. That's such a helpful way to think about it.
Mm-hmm. It does make it less scary. Like if someone's stuck in a marriage and they're like, I don't know whether to stay or go. It's too good to leave, but it's too bad to stay. That's a dilemma I think a lot of people are familiar with. I'm never going to tell someone what to do, but like, you're not going to answer that question. It's too big. So a better question might be, well, do you know what it would look like if you left? And part of the fear of disrupting a relationship is like, what about finances? And what am I going to do about this? And so like, let's make the unknown more known. Then the big decision will feel less big. So instead of focusing on, I have to make this decision, well, where else in your life can you make a different decision? Because getting unstuck anywhere means you're unstuck. Like once you're unstuck, and stuck becomes unstuck as soon as you take an action, no matter what size and no matter what direction.
And that is actually a perfect segue to what I wanted to ask about next, which is kind of the definition of stuckness is not moving forward, is like staying in the experience of stuck. So why do we do that? Like why, when we are in a place that we know is not right and we're feeling stuck, what is it that keeps us there?
The answer is it's complicated, but I'll give you the hot take that no one really likes to talk about, but it's true. Part of the problem with stuckness is that it is doing a job. And most people, and again, I can share this as an addict. Obviously, drugs were destroying my health and my sanity and my life and my relationships and my body. But if once I got honest with myself, I realized that even the most horrific addiction is doing a job. Mine was protecting me from having to deal with the reality of my trauma. Like, I don't want to feel what's real. So I'm going to create a big old mess over here so I don't have to look at all of the things that are over here. Now, it's not always that dramatic, but if you're stuck, stuck is doing a job. All behavior is functional. Not all behavior is good, but all behavior is there doing a job. And most people would say, I'm not getting anything out of this. Like, I'm stuck and I'm not doing anything. And what could this possibly be doing on my behalf? And it's like, it's sort of in business, you need the cost benefit column. Most people can count the costs of stuckness, but it's harder to look at the benefits. And in the book, I list a bunch like image preservation. If you don't try anything new, you don't have to worry about failing and nobody will judge you. If you don't ever take a risk in your career, you don't have to worry about messing up. So there are a lot of benefits to staying stuck. And it's not about shaming you. It's about, let's look at the cost benefit column and see if we can help out an imbalance there, which will make it safer for our brain to come out of freeze.
There are so many different ways to go from stuck to unstuck. But one of the most productive Learning. Learning something new can help you expand your skill set and find new interest, and in the process, help you get unstuck. And if you want to learn something new, you will definitely want to check out Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community that offers thousands of classes designed to help you learn, grow, and tap into your creativity, all of which can help you make the journey from stuck to unstuck. And right now, Skillshare is offering a free month to new members. If you want to access Skillshare's entire library of classes and get the education and instruction you need to shake off the stuckness, just visit seasonofstuck.com/Skillshare and sign up for your free trial today. Again, that's seasonofstuck.com/Skillshare. You wrote in your book about 4 perks of staying stuck that rang so true for me, which is that stuck prevents discomfort, it protects you from emotion, it promotes connection, and it points to problems. And that just rang particularly for me, the prevents discomfort. That is generally when I am stuck, I am avoiding feeling uncomfortable in some way, shape, or form. Similar to you, when I was stuck in drinking, it was to avoid dealing with a lot of emotional turmoil. When it was feeling stuck in my career, it was to stay away from the discomfort of admitting that my corporate 9 to 5 was not the right fit for me and that I really wanted to create my own thing and start my own business. And that felt really scary and uncomfortable. So it was better to just like stay in my job that I didn't really love, but was fine. So it's really interesting to think because stuckness does have a negative connotation, right? But it is like anything else, it's serving us in some way. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it.
And some people get very defensive about that. And again, it's not a personal attack. I would never say to someone, it's your fault because you're getting something out of it. So, whatever, no compassion for you. It's not that. It's, one of the biggest benefits of stuckness is certainty. If you're stuck, it's pretty certain that nothing is going to happen and you're not going anywhere, nothing's going to change. Now, what people don't realize about human brains, unless they know, is that brains are not wired for happiness or success. Brains are wired for survival, and they're engineered to keep us on autopilot. Like your brain doesn't care if you're maximizing your potential. Your brain cares about you staying alive. And so the certainty of stuckness is not beneficial, but it is safe in that we know the outcome. Our brains don't really like uncertainty. And so stuckness is one way, and so is drug addiction. I could guarantee that I was not going anywhere good, but to my brain at that time, that felt better than an unknown. Like hope is scary. Like, what if it works out? What if it doesn't work out? What if it does? Stuck. I know it's going to go bad. Cool. Done. Certainty.
It's the devil you know versus the devil you don't kind of argument, which can be very, very powerful.
Yeah. Neurologically, it's powerful.
And I love that you talk about the vulnerability of hope, that hope can be a scary thing, that when you're stuck and you know you want something different, allowing yourself to picture how things could be better without that guarantee of being able to manifest that betterness can feel like so vulnerable and like you're setting yourself up to be hurt. And sometimes it feels easier not to even allow your brain to go there.
Exactly. And that's why often we choose partners that are bad for us. It's like my dating partners very much reflected my belief that this is never going to happen. I'm not worthy of love. And so I teed up a series of people that pretty much guaranteed a bad outcome. But our brains like certainty more than health and happiness. And again, we could change the wiring. That's what all of the work I do is focused on. Is like, you don't have to stay this way, but it helps to know it's not you, it's your car's out of gas. Like there are solutions, but they're not in your minds.
I love how you said that because I realized I was very stuck is an understatement when I talk about dating in my 20s. Like I was like a couple miles past stuck. And I realized that I was unstuck and that I had truly changed when I got into a relationship with my now husband and I saw the person that he was and the way that he treated me and the foundation of our relationship. And I was like, oh, I must be feeling differently about myself and the way that I view the world in order to be in this relationship. And it was like a little white flag of like, hey, you're unstuck. You did it.
Was it uncomfortable for you at the beginning?
So I did a lot of work. So when I stopped drinking, I think there's this idea, or at least there was an idea for me, that once I stopped drinking, all of my problems would be solved. But I'm sure you know that's not the case. You're just in a better place to address those challenges. And so as I progressed through my 20s and continually found myself in situationships, as the kids say, with with these people who were not bad people, but who were not good people for me or interested in the same thing that I was in, I did a lot of work around that and a lot of therapy and a lot of working on myself to get to the point that when I met my husband, I was ready for it. So if I had met him a year earlier, might not have worked out. But when I met him, I was ready for that. And so it actually didn't feel uncomfortable, which was, again, like a sign that I had kind of unstuck myself in this specific place.
I love that. Oh, that's so good. And my hunch is you didn't just beat yourself into that. It was self compassion gets you unstuck a lot faster than shame and beating yourself. I mean, if beating ourselves up worked, I wouldn't have a job and we'd all be good to go. Like we're all very good at that.
Oh, believe me, I have tried the shaming myself, the beating myself up route, the like drill sergeant approach to change. And even though that is still to this day what my brain tends to default to, the only way that I am able to change in any way, whether it's getting unstuck or anything else, is if I can really show myself a little compassion, give myself a little bit of grace, let myself embody being human and the mistakes and the challenges that come with it. And once I'm able to foster that approach, that's when I can find like the motivation and the energy to really look at what's going on and make positive changes.
I love that. And it's so, and I used to be on the train of I can't give myself compassion because then I will go out of control and it'll just be a mess. But compassion doesn't mean permission, right? It's like giving myself compassion is not a hall pass to do bad things. It's being curious and understanding about what's driving the behaviors. And again, what was fascinating to me to learn that self-compassion is not just this like very nice idea. It does different things in your brain and your nervous system than beating yourself up. When you beat yourself up, you release cortisol. That's a stress hormone. Your brain doesn't care if someone else is doing it or you're doing it. All it knows is, uh-oh, someone's yelling at us. Quick, shut it down. So shame produces shutdown. Self-compassion sort of stops that flood of stress hormones. So there's space so you can move and make decisions, which creates more space, which creates an up vortex.
And thinking about shame as a nervous system response, you need that compassion to put your nervous system in a place where you can make the journey from stuck to unstuck.
Well said. Yes.
So we touched on this a little bit, but when I think about stuckness, right, there's the actual stuckness, but then there are the stories that we tell ourselves about the stuckness that then further perpetuate feeling stuck. So in your professional experience, what are some of the myths or stories that people have around stuckness that keep them stuck longer and more deeply?
Oh, that's good. So it's just who I am is an interesting one. Like that's not even neurologically accurate because our brains are plastic and change and grow and can learn new things and make new pathways. So who you are now is not who you are physically a year, a month, 10 years from now. So, well, this is just who I am. That's a great way to guarantee certainty, right? Like I'll stay stuck if it's just who I am, then I don't need to do the work of change. So that's a biggie. I just have an addicted personality, so I can't help it. That's another one. I used that one for a while. I'm like, well, if it's just who I am and it's just my personality, then there's nothing to do to change it. So I don't have to do anything about it. That was me. I'm lazy is a big one. Like lazy is a judgment on behavior that we don't like. Lazy is not a biological reality about what's happening. Like that's a moral judgment, not actually physically what's happening when you're feeling, quote, unmotivated or slowed down or not wanting to do anything. I struggle with motivation is another one. It's like, you don't need motivation. You don't need to feel like it to do micro yeses. That's why I love them so much. Like you don't need to feel anything to change things, which is, thank goodness, my first year in recovery, I didn't feel much of anything except, wow, this stinks. Wow, I'm uncomfortable. Like, oh, this is not, why am I doing this? Like, this is whatever. And the other myth and belief that keeps us stuck is I'm broken. And there are no broken people. Our bodies can get broken, certainly. Trauma injures our soul and our psyche, but there's, to me, no such thing as a broken person. Injured, yes. Broken, no.
There is no such thing as a broken person. That is beautiful and true. And in case anyone is listening that needed to hear that, you are not broken because there's no such thing as a broken person. One of the big ones for me that was like a very big shift was feeling stuck in anxiety. Like, oh, I'm stuck in this anxious state and I'm stuck in just being anxious and all of the responses that go with that. And realizing that, partially through your book and how you talk about anxiety, that like anxiety isn't the stuckness, it is pointing you towards where you are stuck and what needs to change.
Exactly. Another like automobile analogy. It's like the check engine light. If my check engine light comes on and I take my car into a mechanic, he's not going to go, well, your check engine light is on, so therefore you have check engine light disorder. Like that doesn't even make any sense. But we do that to ourselves with anxiety. And the mental health world does this with anxiety. Oh, you're anxious? You must have an anxiety disorder. That makes just as much sense as check engine light disorder. Like, no. Or if you see someone walk into a spider web and they absolutely flip out and turn into like a ninja trying to get the spider web, it's not like they developed a sudden onset acute case of like arachnid dysmorphia disorder. It's like they walked into a spider web, they're going to flip out. That makes sense. It makes sense. So rather than looking at anxiety as this is my problem, and I get anxiety is a problem. Like I have it too. It's not pleasant and it can cause real problems. But anxiety is the symptom. It says there is a problem. I'm not your problem. I'm your messenger. But we get so focused on the discomfort of the symptom, we forget the symptom is a signal.
The symptom is a signal. Yes. Changing that story for me really helped me relate to my anxiety in a different way and soften it a bit. And instead of getting caught in the spiral of, I'm anxious, what's wrong? I'm anxious, what's wrong? Tapping in and saying, hey, I'm feeling anxiety. What is my system trying to tell me right now? What is it pointing me to? Where am I stuck? And that has been such a profound and helpful shift in getting to the core of what's actually going on instead of getting caught in the symptom.
I love that. And sometimes people legitimately don't have an answer to the what's my system trying to tell me. And I have a lot of compassion for that because it's like if you've spent a lifetime ignoring your body and now it's okay, body, I listened to this podcast and now I'm ready to listen. What's going on? It's likely you're going to get a whole bunch of nothing. But sometimes it's enough just to remind yourself, okay, I don't know what the message is here, but my brain is on my side. We're conditioned to think of our brains as our enemy. I fight anxiety. I battle depression. I battle addiction. And it's like, if you think the thing in you is out to get you, that's going to create a never ending cycle of anxiety and stuckness. So if you don't know why you're stuck and you don't know what your anxiety is telling you, start with, I don't know what this is, but my brain is on my side. I know you're trying to tell me something. I don't know what it is. I'll keep a lookout, and maybe you need an extra pair of ears and eyes on the situation, but it makes sense. Just because I don't get it right now doesn't mean it doesn't make sense.
Oh, that felt so targeted towards me. I often feel like my brain is just out to get me. Like, I'm like, really? This is what we're going to do today? Come on, like, get it together. But you're right. Your brain is on your side. Its function, its sole purpose is to keep you alive. So shifting that relationship and reminding yourself that you and your brain are a team to figure out stuckness together is also a really helpful reframe.
And it's powerful. And again, it's not just like this nice idea, like let's all hold hands and thank our brains, but it changes your physiology by thinking of things in this way. Even our physical illness, like the language we use, like I've had digestive stuff my entire life. So of course, irritable bowel syndrome, right? Like I'm having an attack. It's like my stomach is not attacking me. There's something in the external environment, in the food I'm ingesting, in my level of stress that I'm not metabolizing. That's the problem. The problem is not inside me. The problem is something feels threatening outside me and my body is trying. So like if I'm, nauseous and this is going to be gross. Sorry, people. But like if I'm nauseous and my head's in the toilet, I have to tell myself this is my body trying to keep me alive. Thank you, body. Thank you, body. Thank you, body. Versus, oh my God, it's doing it again. I hate this. I hate this. I hate this, which produces cortisol, which produces inflammation. And then off we go. So there's real practical applications here.
Mm. So thank you for helping me more deeply understand the stuckness. And now I want to give listeners, in addition to a deeper understanding of the stuckness, like some clear, actionable ways that they can take the journey from stuck to unstuck. And I feel like your book was like bursting with like actual things that people can do. So if someone is listening and is feeling stuck in their relationship, in their health journey, in their career, in their relationship to themselves, what are some strategies you would suggest that they use to start the process of getting unstuck?
I love that. I do have a workbook coming out in June, which I'm so excited about because it's all exercises. I'm like, if you don't want to read, here's like a bunch of exercises extracted that you can just skip the reading process altogether. So that's my little shameless plug for that. But there's a 3-step process that's really easy that I'll give you now that people can start doing right now. It's what's so nice about this work is you don't need to wait for the delivery of the special meals or the good pens or getting the perfect day planner. It's like, here are your 3 steps. Step 1, ditch the why. Why am I stuck? Why am I anxious? Right now, it doesn't matter. Like if the building caught on fire, you're not going to ask, why is it on fire? You're going to ask, where's the exit? So step 1, don't ask why. Step 2, ask what are 3 micro choices, micro yeses available to me right now. Just pick 3. And then step 3 is pick one and do it. Bank it, do it again. And do it again. Like that will get you unstuck. And once you're up and running, we can do analysis and exploration and the hows and the whys. But if we're talking about getting from stuck to go, step 1, ditch the why. Step 2, identify 3 micro yeses. Step 3, do one. Pat yourself on the back for doing it. Because if you say, oh, well, I did a micro yes, but it's not like I did the thing, you've negated the benefit of the micro yes because shaming yourself produces stress hormones. So do it, bank it, pat yourself on the shoulder, repeat. That'll get you unstuck from just about anything.
Oh my gosh, my little type A heart is just loving the 3-step process. That feels accessible in any moment, because stuckness can feel very heavy. And trying to think of doing some elaborate exercise and journaling for 10 pages and all of those things can feel hard in that moment. But stopping with the why questions, identifying 3 micro yeses, and then doing one, give yourself a little pat on the back, that is doable.
And like you said, it's doable where I'll give you an example. I'll tell you a story about my shenanigans. So I had my last crystal meth bender and I was tweaking. I hadn't slept in days. My brain was just not braining very well. So I picked up the phone. I made the phone call, okay, here's what's actually going on. This is what I'm up to. What am I going to do? Why am I like this? Why did I do this to myself? And how am I ever, I've destroyed everything. And my friend listened. And then she's like, yeah, Britt, when was the last time you ate anything? And I was like, that stopped me in my tracks. I'm like, oh, I don't need to figure out my trauma and my relationships and fixing all the collateral damage. I haven't eaten food in days. And so this woman, she talked me through eating a yogurt spoonful by spoonful for an hour. Like my micro yeses were like this. She's like, Britt, can you go to your fridge? Because keep in mind, I'm tweaking. I'm like, I can go to my fridge. Yeah. And then she's like, can you open it? Okay. Yeah. Can you find something in there to eat? And that's what we did. And just having that little bit of nutrition and sugar and carbs and calories in me allowed me to take another step and another step. And I got from that life to this one by doing this.
I love that story so much. Can relate. Been in similar situations, maybe not the exact same, but very similar where you're stuck in that, whether it's a hangover or you're like just wanting to be in a different state and just you think you have to solve everything there, but then the answer is as simple as just like eat a sandwich.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Liz Gilbert, who's the author of Eat, Pray, Love, is like my spirit animal. I just love her so, so much. There's a part in Eat, Pray, Love where she is laying on the bathroom floor and she's crying, asking all of these questions to herself about what to do about her marriage that isn't working and thinking that she has to solve it. And then she hears a voice that just says, go to bed, Liz. And it's like Of course, that's the thing to do in that moment. You're not going to solve the entire thing. You're not going to get unstuck there on the bathroom floor. It's that micro yes of like, let's go to bed, you know?
And it's really easy to fight that, because they seem so simple and so ridiculous. It's like, surely it can't be that simple. And again, I'm not saying life is easy or that our problems and pain and trauma and crises are easy to manage, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about how to go from, I want to do the thing and I'm not, and there's no good reason why I'm not. What's wrong with me? That we can solve with micro yeses.
I am going to make a point to be thinking about these micro yeses that I can make the next time I feel stuck, which is certainly on the horizon somewhere in the not too distant future, knowing myself. Britt, this information has been so incredibly helpful. Thank you. Here at Season of Stuck, as we near the end of the episode, there's a couple of questions that we like to ask guests. So if it's okay with you, I just have a few more questions I'd love to ask.
Bring it.
Okay, so thinking about the future version of yourself, like the ideal Brit that you are working every day to one day grow into. If she could travel back in time and talk to the current version of you, what advice do you think she would give you on how to navigate stuckness at this point of your life?
Oh, I love that. Well, just to be clear, my future self does time travel to my current self, and we all time travel to our past selves, and we all talk to each other often. That's parts work, and it's so much fun, and it's really powerful. So, future self says to me now, there's not an ideal, there's not a place you get to. It's keep doing the thing. Like, everything you need, you have inside you, and anything you need. And again, I'm not talking basic needs and resources. I'm talking, like, generally speaking, the soul stuff that enables us to shoot for our dreams and reach for the stars and all that stuff. Everything you have, you already have installed. So it's not like you go from this less than version to this greater than version. Every step of the way, we get to become more us. So future me is like, you're going to have so much fun uncovering all these other aspects of yourself. Like, we're not changing who you are, we're becoming who you are. And that's fun.
Isn't that such an amazing realization? It was one that I had shortly after stopping drinking, which is that I was trying to fill this hole with external things, not realizing that all of that soul stuff that I needed was already there.
Right. That's why the concept of I want to better myself, it's like, I get it, but there's not this future version of you that's lovable and acceptable and worthy any more than you are right now. Like, you are worthy, acceptable, lovable. And at the core, it's like the center of a storm. The eye of the storm is the calm place. The I, capital I, at the center of our psyche is untouched by all this, the stuff that we go through. Like, at the core of every human, there's some good stuff there waiting to be discovered.
Yes, we all have good stuff at the core, and that's a really beautiful reminder.
That doesn't excuse bad behavior, though. That's my other thing. Like, just because someone's core is awesome doesn't make it okay for them to act like a jerk.
A very fair thing to point out. So, okay. And then these next questions are like rapid fire. So I'm just going to ask you a question. You just say the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
So, favorite movie of all time?
Indiana Jones.
Ooh.
The first three.
I was going to say, maybe not so much the new ones.
The first three.
Go-to coffee order?
Almond milk latte.
Okay. If you could have any animal in the world as a pet, what animal would it be?
I have it. My little dog, Oscar. He's my buddy.
That's how I feel about my dogs. I'm like, I would not trade them for any animal, like dinosaur, penguin, polar bear. No, just my two pups. And then last question, best concert that you have ever been to?
Oh, man. Watch me freeze up. That's the question that gets me stuck. I don't like, what's the best concert that I've ever been to? I don't even know. Like, I love theater. I don't go to concerts that often. Like,
okay, best show you've ever been to then. I'm also a musical theater nerd, so.
Okay, cool. Because I'm like, no doubt in 1995 was probably the best concert because you're like in that state. But Cirque du Soleil's the water one in Vegas, was the most magical thing I've ever seen, I think, in my entire life.
Let me say, Vegas knows how to do a production.
There's some other things that they could improve on, but oh my gosh, the best food, the best productions, the best circus stuff.
I was gonna say, if you want a good buffet and a good like spectacle show, Vegas is where it's at.
True story. Yay, Vegas.
Yes. Britt, thank you so much for coming on the show, for sharing all of your insights. It has been so helpful for me, and I know that it will be so helpful for everyone listening. For anyone out there who wants to connect with you or follow your work, what's the best way for them to do that?
Find me on Instagram where I have poor boundaries and I'm scrolling chickens late into the night along with you in our algorithm. So it's just at Britt Frank, and Britt has 2 T's. You can buy my book, The Science of Stuck, or the workbook wherever you buy books. And my website is scienceofstuck.com. This was so fun. Thank you for having me.
Oh, this was the most fun. Thank you again. So excited that you were here and we got to have this conversation.
Yay, unstuck.
That's it for today. A huge thank you to our guests for their incredible insights, and a huge thank you to you, our listeners. We know that there are so many podcasts out there to choose from, and we are just so grateful that you chose ours. If you enjoyed today's episode, consider recommending the podcast to a friend or family member that you think would enjoy it. And to make sure that you never miss an episode, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever it is you get your podcasts. And while you're there, if you loved the show, please consider leaving a 5-star review. It plays such a huge part in getting this podcast out to a wider audience and ultimately supporting more people on their journey from stuck to unstuck. And to keep in touch and access even more stuck-related content, follow us on Instagram at Season of Stuck and visit our website, seasonofstuck.com, where you can sign up to get episodes delivered directly to your inbox. Thank you again for being here. It is so, so appreciated. Until next time, I'm Deanna DeBera, and you're listening to Season of Stuck.